So hello to everyone. It's very nice to be here. I hope you still have some energy since we're on Friday late in the day. I hope this will be interesting for you guys. I think it will. I will try to make it interesting, and I think it's especially important to think about media now. It's always been a subject, but it's getting more and more important. And that's why my presentation was redone until this very morning, because the last days with the election of Trump has made some new subjects worrying, and I think it gives a better understanding of why Mediapart's model matters and why independent press is important. So my name is Cécile, as you know. I'm the executive director of Mediapart. I've been in Mediapart for 7 years now, so I'm not one of the founders. I will tell you about the story of Mediapart, but I wasn't there all the time. I am not a journalist, I have to say. The president and the director of publication is a journalist. We are the two leaders of the newspaper. But I'm more on the business part, making the newspaper be able to do its job, making sure we have enough, money and people to do good journalism and to be heard and well known by the audience. First of all, I would like to ask you how many of you guys actually do follow every day political, environmental, social information. Do you guys all inform? Okay, good. And how many of you have purchased a subscription to a daily newspaper in your country or here in France? Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, good. How many of you have a subscription to Mediapart? Okay, you're my favorite. I'm just kidding. Okay, so okay, I know. So first of all, a few words about what is Mediapart. You see a picture of the newsroom. That's the daily conference where every day journalists, but also non-journalists, discuss about the subjects that we're going to write about. That's one of the specificities in Mediapart. It's not only journalists being able to attend these meetings. Usually in big media, it's only the chiefs that are allowed to discuss these topics, but in Mediapart, we think we have a very strong democratic vision for journalism and for enterprise and business as well. So everybody is welcome to participate in this daily conference. It probably was a Friday because usually there are more people. So it's what should I? Okay, all right. So Mediapart was founded in 2008 by journalists. The most famous one, maybe you've heard of it, is Edoui Plenel. He was the former director of Le Monde, which is the main daily French newspaper in France. Yeah, and it's an investigative online newspaper, which means when it was created, the founders decided that they would not go to print newspaper. It was the beginning of the internet. I mean, not the beginnings, but it was not usual to put news on the internet. All the news were free on the internet. But the founders thought there was a value to information, to real, verified, how do you say it? I can't find my word. Yeah, to value to information, and that people would actually pay for news because Mediapart is behind a hard paywall. Today, it's grown big, and I will tell you more about the story. We publish about 10 to 15 stories each day, so investigative stories, but also analysis and reporting everywhere in France and in the world. And we are on the reader revenue model with a hard paywall. Today we have 235,000 subscribers, which puts us in the 3rd position in France behind Le Monde and Le Figaro regarding online subscription. Okay, doesn't work. We've made about 6,500 investigations since the beginning. We have about 3.5 million visitors per month, and we are now about 150 employees. Half of them are journalists, and half of them are non-journalists. They are the marketing team, product teams, client service teams, etc., etc. And it's a balance that has been a key for the success of Mediapart, because at first the founders thought that if you had good journalism, it was enough. But good journalism is not enough if you're not able to put it on user-friendly application and sites, if you're not able to promote your contents all over the internet, if you're not able to communicate, etc., etc. So now we've had this balance for many, many years. Half of the staff is journalists and half of the staff is non-journalists, but we all work together. We are in the same bureau. I can't find my word either. Offices, yes. There it's open spaces, and we are all together because we want everybody to be able to talk to anybody in the team, and that makes something, I think, particular to Mediapart as an organization. So I'm going to tell you about the story of Mediapart and what I like to call the three steps of independence and sustainability. Because if you read the media, most of them will tell you that they're independent. But in Mediapart, we have a very radical point of view about independence, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. And then, in a second time, I will tell you why it's getting more and more important to have these kinds of media in France, but everywhere, to organize the resistance and to fight against all what's coming nowadays. And I think it will be, I hope you will understand why the choices that were made a long time ago, 17 years ago, are now showing how important they were and how foreseeing also they were. So the first step of independence was taken at the creation of the newspaper. The founders, they said, okay, we are sure, as former journalists from Le Monde and Libération, that there are some people who are willing to pay to get to information, valuable information. Information has value. It shouldn't be for free everywhere on the internet. And we will find those people to pay. So they decided to go only online with a hard paywall. And they strictly decided, and we haven't changed that a bit ever since, there would be no advertisement, because as you can easily understand, when you depend on advertising, you might get some pressure from the businesses that buy publicity from you. All of many other newspapers are under the pressure of finding advertisers, of making them happy, and so it impacts the content, because you want to write something that's going to have a big audience, so that the advertisers take publicity in your media. We also decided to have no public subsidies. In France, there are some aide à la presse, so it's the state giving subsidies to the media, particularly the print media, but also now the online media, to help them with their business model. And we are against, radically against those subsidies, because it creates a link between you and the government, and it can be a heavy pressure for you. If you want, for example, one of the very famous stories in the history of Mediapart is called L'affaire Cahuzac. It's a story about a former financial minister that was in place, and we found out and revealed that he had some hidden accounts in Switzerland, which obviously is forbidden, and he lied about it for a few months, and we had proof, but we had to fight because it was in the beginnings of Mediapart, and we were not that famous at that time, so other media were like, no, they don't have a proof, they are saying nonsense, etc., etc. And finally, he confessed, and he resigned, of course, from being the finance minister. And you can understand how, if salaries of our journalists depended on state subsidies, we wouldn't have been able to publish this story. So our independence, economic independence, is really giving us total freedom about what we want to write about, and there are no one able to pressure us. We don't have also remunerated shareholders. I will come to the capital structure that we have now, which is interesting too. But from the very beginning, the journal was owned mainly by journalists and a little bit by a few investors, but that we knew very well, and that never got money out of their investments. So they just followed the project because they believed we needed some independent media in France. And also, and I will tell you more about it later also, we have no financial agreement with platforms, digital platforms. Many newspapers and media in France have agreements with platforms, whereas it's on commercial services, on artificial intelligence agreements also. And when Le Monde, for example, makes a deal with Google, it's worth a few $1,000,000, and it creates dependency with those platforms. And as you might have come to understand now, it's a very unstable ecosystem, and we are not going on the right way on this matter. So this is really the bet from the beginning. Everyone thought that we were crazy doing that. Like, a lot of people thought Mediapart would never gather enough subscribers to live, and we've been living well for 17 years now. 98% of our revenue comes from individual subscription, just like your subscription, and all of the individual subscriptions, and the other 2% come from revenue that depends on our content too, like when we have a contract with libraries, for example. So it's all about, we're only dependent on our readers, and that's very important, because it doesn't mean that our readers can tell us what to write about, but it means that we have to report to them. So we have a very strong culture of transparency. We publish our numbers every year. We have a lot of, many times in the year when we explain our work, etc., etc. But it gives us a very strong power, editorial power, because we have no one who can tell us, no, you won't write about this, or I will do this or that. It's very rare. So this model, this is the number of subscribers that we have, and you see that it's been going up and up and up. At the end of 2024, we are about 232,000 unique subscribers, individual subscribers, which is like the most important number we've ever had. And you see that it's been growing and growing ever since the beginning. At first, it was difficult, I told you. You're not a brand. When you create your media, no one knows you. So you have to prove with your work, your journalist work, that you are worth paying. That took 2 to 3 years, and then after l'affaire Cahuzac that I told you about, it became more and more and more convincing to the subscribers. You can see that in 2020 there was a big rise in subscriptions. It's the COVID time. All of the media, especially digital media, they got a lot of subscriptions because people needed information. They didn't know what was going on. They needed some information. So we had a very big raise at this time. And then for 2 years, we were kind of worried. You see, we were like about 200,000 subscribers. For 3 years, it wouldn't move so much. We were like, oh, maybe this is a ceiling, a glass ceiling, and we've reached it, and we can't go further. But we didn't want to think that, and we changed a bit our strategies, but with keeping our fundamental values alive, like, you know, like looking for facts, serious journalism, very strong connection to the field, etc., etc. And we've been growing again this past 2 years, and we are aiming for even more, because first of all, as you understand, we depend on the subscription to live and to do journalism. We reinvest the money we have in journalism. And second of all, we actually do think we have some important things to say to people, especially nowadays. We think free press is fundamental to a democratic system, and we hope that democratic systems will remain in the few next years, but we have no certainty about this. And this is the sales revenue from 2008 till 2024, and we are reaching about 25 million euros of sales revenue this year, so it's huge. I have to say it's really comfortable, but it doesn't mean that it will always be the same. Some papers have been very successful for years, and then they just forget to think about what the public wants, or they don't look for innovation, or they just, you know, do what they know how to do. And it's very easy for a newspaper to fail suddenly. So we're not like, okay, we're so good, we earn so much money and it's gonna be like this for many years. We are always thinking, trying to be very humble and to be realistic about the ecosystem of news and what we can bring to people that they actually want to read and that will be useful for them to read and to hear and watch, because we also have some video and some podcasts. So it's very big numbers. It's very comforting, and but at any moment, if we lose, I don't know, like 50,000 subscribers because we publish something that is entirely true and people start to think that we are making nonsense and not doing good journalism, we could easily have some severe difficulties. So we remain very vigilant, and we try to think about the next steps all the time. This is the second step of independence. It's a bit more complicated. I'm going to try to make it simple. So the founders of Mediapart, there were 4 of them, from a very early time, in like 2015, I think, started to think about how to transmit the newspaper to the team, because they didn't want to give it to their children, they didn't want to sell it to any investor that would change the project, and they started thinking about what innovative and creative solution could work for Mediapart. Some previous experience made them fear about newspapers that are completely owned by the team, because whenever you get financial problems, might be difficult, might create some power fights, etc., etc. And they wanted to make sure that after the departure, the newspaper will still keep going. So it was not an easy reflection. And finally, they went to meet the Guardian. And the Guardian is owned since 1936, I think, by the Scott Trust, which is a holding that that owns the capital of the Guardian and also has financial reserves. And so they tried to take this model into the French legislation, which is very different. So it was kind of hard. They had to discuss with the administration a lot, and they decided to create a fund, le Fonds pour une presse libre, which means a fund for a free press, which is a non-profit endowment fund. So it's a fund, I will show you the details afterwards, that has two major goals. One is to protect the independence and pluralism of journalism. And second one is to ensure Mediapart's independence, and so that Mediapart can remain free from corporate ownership or external control. I'm going to show you this, not very easily to understand, but maybe I will help. So this is Mediapart with its executive committee, with a board. And when they went to see the administration, since the endowment funds are not very common in France, they were kind of reluctant, because when you have a foundation, you can collect donation in France, and it comes with tax deduction. So it's a very specific way of financement. And so they said, okay, if you want to do this and you want this structure to buy the capital of Mediapart so that it remains protected in the future, you have to create this holding that will be in between, and you have to put all the rules so that the money cannot transit anyhow. So there are very strict rules. Every year, with the results of Mediapart, we've been beneficial for 14 years in a row, so we do have financial benefits every year. So every year, a part of this benefits goes into this holding. So it's the dividends. And this, for the first 4 years, the SPIM had contracted a loan to buy Mediapart's capital. Now it's over, so now we're putting money here as financial reserve for the future, because we want to make sure that we have some money and we can depend only on ourselves when the harder times come, and there will be harder times, that's for sure. And so this, we put dividend, we put money here, and a little bit of this money finances the functioning of the Fonds pour une presse libre, whose main role, and it's becoming quite famous now in France, for the past 5 years since its creation, it's collected donation as high as 700,000 euros that have all been redistributed to little media projects, all independent media. That's a way of trying to help the ecosystem of the independent media in France, which is very vivid, but very, very small initiatives everywhere. And they have difficulties finding some financial stability, because it's hard to convince people to get subscriptions. And so the FPL helps them and it's a strict non-intervention. They can't intervene in Mediapart's editorial line or even on the business line, etc., etc. So it's really like everything is thought in order to preserve Mediapart, because the capital of Mediapart is now here. No one can buy it. No one, like, we can't fear that Vincent Bolloré will buy this one because it's protected here. And now we are also putting some money here because we know that the years ahead of us are going to be super strong and super hard. And we want to make sure that when we face difficulties, because at some point maybe we won't be beneficial anymore, and we will need some money to invest, to pay the salaries, to develop some new projects, etc., etc. And we want to make sure that when that time comes, we don't have to go see any investor, we don't have to go to the bank and ask for a loan, and we will have sufficient money here to keep doing good journalism. So maybe it's a bit harsh to understand, but it's a unique model in France. I mean, unique, no. Some other newspaper copied the model, but it doesn't function in the same way. And as for us, it's not really guaranteeing any independence. So we're really proud of this, and it's the second innovation that the founders of Mediapart did. So they had this only buyers, like only readers can finance us, and then this independence, everlasting independence, we hope, for the newspaper. And the third step of independence is, as I told you, to put some money, some reserve, to make sure that in the future we can rely on ourselves to keep the newspaper alive. And so these are the four co-founders: Edoui Plenel, Laurent Mauduit, François Bonnet, and Marie-Hélène Smiejean, who was the executive director before me. And I always, when I talk about the story of Mediapart, I always want to tell this because I think it's super important for any business that you might one day create if you do so. It's those people, not only they created a very, very successful model, but also they started very early thinking about how to transmit it to a new generation. And we've been preparing for years this transition. They left one after the other. And today, since last March, it's a whole new leading team that is ruling the newspaper. So that's me. Karine Fouteau is the president and director of publication, and Lénaïque and Valentine are the two editorial directors. So as you see, it's an only women leadership, and we're really proud of it also. And if you've heard of other companies transmitted from the founders to new teams, it usually fails because it's unprepared, because it's insincere, the way they try to give the keys to a new generation. And in our case, it was really well prepared because the founders are really humble and generous people who are so, they just want the goal of Mediapart to be able to continue. They really think that good journalism, investigation, and democracy is more important than everything. And they've done this, and they're still around us. They're still here if we need some advice, etc. But they really transmitted the newspaper, and we are really proud and thankful also of them for that. So the third step of independence, as I told you, is to be profitable and to have long-lasting financial independence. We don't have any bank loan. We've been profitable for 13 years, as I said. We self-finance all of our investments, and we are building financial reserves for the future. Why is it so important? It's not that we like to make a lot of money. We actually have a very strict policy about salaries. It's a gap of 1 to 3 from the highest salary to the smallest salary. So we have like we have very good low salaries, and the highest salaries are pretty low for what you could find elsewhere. So it's not because we want to earn more money or to be rich and embourgeoisement, etc. It's because we know that if you want to invest in journalism, you need money because it's expensive. Investigation is very expensive. It takes time. It's not like you can write your investigation from behind your desk in 2 days. You have to take some weeks. You have to make some travels. You have to, sometimes it takes a year to write the story because the sources, they're not going to talk so easily, because you have to cross-check everything. We don't publish anything unless we are 100% sure that it's true. We also work with our lawyers a lot to make sure that the way we write things is correct. And we've had, I think, like 500 justice trials since the creation, and we've lost only 5 of them because we really want to make some serious work, and we would never ever publish something unless we are completely sure it's true. And I think that's why now people trust in Mediapart so much, because they know if they read something that it's true. And that's something we will never change, and that's high quality journalism we believe in, but it's expensive, and we also send journalists everywhere in the world to report, and we also do some video. Video is very expensive. We try so many things, and we want to be able to finance them alone and not depend on what other media do. Like Google has been financing a lot of developments, for example, but when you're being financed by Google, you have to adopt their tools, for example, and you become dependent, and we don't want that. So we also develop our own technical tools most of the time, unless we really don't have time, but most of our tools, the main strategic tools, are self-developed by our inner teams. So why is independence so important? Because you could be like, okay, yeah, that's cool. You can read something you wouldn't read elsewhere. How is that so important in democracy? And I think I have many, many examples to show you to make you understand why we think that it's always been important, but it's getting more and more crucial these days. First of all, in France, as you might or might not know, we have a growing concentration of mainstream media in the hands of a few billionaires, or millionaires, but it was the case in 2008, but it's getting worse and worse. Very few billionaires from the arm industry, from all kinds of industries, buy themselves media. And media business is not the one which is going to get you some money. It's usually non-beneficial. It's usually very highly expensive for the people who invest in it, because every year you have to put more money, more and more and more. For example, the journal Libération, it's had 2 loans in the 3 past years from Daniel Kretinsky, 40 million euros each, so 28 million euros. So how are you going to reimburse all these millions when you can't make a benefit from your activity? So journalism and the media in general, they don't make you earn money. So why would those people buy themselves some media? Of course, it's to buy influence. And it's been getting more and more worrying in France, because lately it's been growing. So you can't read everything, but it's another media, Le Monde Diplomatique, who every year launches this this plan, and you can see that only a few people, most of them being in the highest fortunes in France and in the world, they own most of the private media. So that's preoccupying because, of course, when you buy a media, when you invest money, you are going to ask some things in return. So, of course, don't ask any questions about my business. Don't write about my friend because, you know, he's struggling a lot, so you shouldn't write this paper. And it's the case also in other countries. You've all heard of Jeff Bezos, for example, who owns the Washington Post and decided to not publish the article before the presidential election. Usually the Washington Post, is supposed to be a Democrat newspaper, takes a side. And so there was a paper that had been written by the editorial team endorsing Kamala Harris, and Jeff Bezos, the owner, asked for that paper not to be published. So it's a really direct way of influence from the billionaires to the people in the media, and there are many, many examples of that. In France, I want to tell you about Vincent Bolloré in particular, because he used to earn Canal+, CNews, C8, their TV channels, but he's been buying for the last 3 years other media, especially Europe 1, which is a very listened to radio, Le Journal du Dimanche, which is a very historical and famous newspaper in France, and with a very clear and a very clear strategy to change the editorial line and to give some more media space to his ideology. Is close to the far right in France, and ever since he's owned those media, he's changed the teams. There have been some strikes. Every time he's taken over a new media, there have been some strikes from the journalists, but they never got anything. A lot of them left, but still, those media keep going. And for example, on Europe 1, during the legislative election that we had in June in France, he decided to put one of the very, very famous anchorman he has, that's usually on TV, for 2 hours a day on Europe 1, just to say all the bad things that they think about the left side of politics in France. And so it's really obvious, it's not even hiding itself. He buys media to make sure these ideas are getting a larger audience. So it's very preoccupying in France, and it's working. So you can think about, if you want to have parallels, it's the same with Fox News in the United States. It's been a long trend. It's like some people seem to discover this, but it's been a long trend. It's been true in the USA for the last 20 years. It's been true in France for the last 10 years. And we have media that are more and more polarized, and that make the far right ideas accessible to many, many audiences. I want to tell you also about Bernard Arnault, that you might have heard of. He's the president of LVMH, a luxury group, very famous luxury group. And he's the owner of Les Echos, which is the main economic newspaper in France. So you're one of the richest men in France, and you own the main newspaper, economic newspaper. So of course, you might conclude that there might be bias in the way that Les Echos speak about some businesses. He also owns The Parisien, which is a newspaper that has a large audience in France too. And he owns many others too. Exactly, that's my next. Who do you see behind Donald Trump? Bernard Arnault is one of the most fortunate men on earth. And he was at the pledge of oath of Donald Trump this week. So it gives you an insight of what kind of the political board is on. And that's a second danger and risk for the media now. You have concentration of the media, and it's true in France, it's true elsewhere. But now we also have far-right regimes taking over many countries in Europe, in the USA, we might say. And those regimes, they're really clear about the media. They don't want any free media. They want media that tell the stories they want to tell. So either they own the media, which is the case most of the time, or they put pressure on the media. And that's why I put also Viktor Orban from Hungary and Giorgia Meloni from Italy. In those countries, in Europe, ever since those people are in power, they've made some, small changes and attempts. Giorgia Meloni tries to intervene more and more in the public media in Italy. Viktor Orban, like many Hungarian journalists, just flee the country. And it's not a hidden agenda. Like the far-right regimes don't like freedom of the press. They want other speeches, other stories to be in the heads of the people. And of course, in France, when, I was going to say if, but let's say when the far right comes to govern, they will have some major actions against the media. They can stop, and they say they will stop the public subsidies that I told you about. Many newspapers, including independent newspapers, depend on those subsidies. If they stop, many media will die. They also they're also preparing a change of TVA. How is it in English? VAT, because in France the press has a very small VAT, and they're preparing a higher VAT for the media. And if you put the VAT to 20%, as it could be, like many media in France won't resist. It won't take a year. They will vanish. So we know that when the time comes, it will be very hard to fight and to stay alive. And that's why we're so happy at Mediapart that we made those choices so much time ago, because now it's becoming critical. And we might be some of the very few that could actually survive the far-right government, and that we will have no pressure. We will be able to write on everything. So that's why it's so important, and I think it's nice to highlight and to watch the big picture. Those very old choices are now proving their efficiency and necessity. And then I have to tell you about also tech giants, social media platforms, artificial intelligence, etc., because that's another huge problem, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's linked to also the election of Donald Trump. I'm sure you've all heard of this, so I'm not going to go into details, but it's been for some time now. The social media platforms have been changing their policies. A few years ago, the media would go on social media, and they would be able to, promote their content, to have some interesting, sometimes conversation with the audience, etc. Then in 2022, Elon Musk bought X, Twitter at that time, that became X, and changed the way it works, changed the algorithms, etc., and made it a place of violence and discrimination, and somewhere you can't even begin to think you can convince people on other points of view. So we decided to leave X a few weeks ago, but it's late and it's so powerful. We are facing like these huge giants that are changing. If you think about Mark Zuckerberg, is changing his position completely, stopping the fact-checking on his products at Meta, saying that woke people and progressive values have been too present on his social platforms, and now it's going to be back with more masculinity and more, all those nice values. So these people, they are the richest people on earth. They all agree that the truth doesn't matter so much. They are only about ideology. They're only about cannibalizing the resources, like your personal data, but also environment resources, because as you know, I'm sure, AI is a very huge problem for environmental resources as well. So these people, they're just thinking that the world is theirs, and they have every tool and money to control the minds of the people. So that's a huge challenge. We've never known this before. It's and we can't fight those people in their fields. Like media can't fight Elon Musk on X. It's like, and many French media are leaving X right now. It's a lost battle. We have to go somewhere else. And the thing is, it's not so easy to project ourselves in how do we do that? Because it's a French problem, but it's an international problem. It's very scary. And that's something that in Mediapart we also think might be an advantage that we have. First of all, we're independent. We have no pressure from advertisers. We don't have financial shareholders that might tell us, you should do this or that more because I want some more money from my investments. We don't depend on state subsidies. We don't depend on tech giants and platforms. We never agreed on any deal with the platforms, so we never had it 1 cent from Google or Meta or any of them. But also, we've always had a very strong participative philosophy. Mediapart actually means media, and part is for participative. We have, which is called Le Club. It's kind of growing old now, but in 2008 it was still modern, I guess. It's free blogs that all of our subscribers can have and write. They can write anything, and it's an entire column on the website. So we actually work with the contributors to help them express points of view, talk about their experience, contribute to the democratic debate. And that's something really important. We have to think about how to modernize this, because so many people won't give their opinion now on a text. Some people might record a sound, some people might film themselves, but we have to, I think, go further on modernizing our tools. But it's a pillar of democracy that we've been working on, and that is becoming very important, we think. We've always had free events and gatherings, like many times in a year. We meet our public, we talk about them, we respond to their questions, we explain the work, and it's always crowded. That gives us hope, really, because we think there are still some people wanting to defend democracy and to defend the facts and truth. And so we really try with different participative projects also to stay in touch with our communities. And of course we would stayed in touch with our communities through social media so far, but now we are going to stop. I think we haven't decided to leave Meta, like Instagram and Facebook so far, but I'm sure it will come very soon. So we have to have a direct link with the people, and not only with our 235,000 subscribers, because it's not enough to organize the resistance. So we have to find a way with our brand, which is quite famous, with our legitimacy, to gather people and to, be a place, I hope, to resist what's going on in France and in the world. So I thought it was really interesting to put that in perspective with what's going on these days, especially in the US, but in France also very soon. And because that's really the role of the media. The media is the fourth power. They're supposed to be fundamental to a vivid democracy, because they reveal facts, because they give people the information they need to make themselves some opinions, enlightened opinions. And we see that it's getting less and less easy, because young generation get information from social media that we've seen are really not interested in information anymore. So that leaves us very worried about how the youngest generation get information, how they exert their critical mind, because you have to have a critical mind to be a citizen. So I think I'm finished. Was it too long? Oh no, 52 minutes, perfect. Wow.